Joining us now on the line is Michael Mukasey, who was the 81st Attorney General of the United States. Mr. Mukasey, it's good to have you with us here on Mornings on the Mall.
Good to be with you.
All right, so listen, we want to get right into this discussion about this case. You know, we found out that this judge, Judge Richard Leon, appeals court judge, has decided that it's very, very likely that the National Security Agency has gone a step too far and violated perhaps the Fourth Amendment rights of Americans by collecting this data about their phone calls. Now, the way it's set up, as we understand it, is they collect the PIN data, who you called, what time you called, and all that kind of stuff. But they don't look at it unless they have a reason to believe there's a national security problem and they need to go back and trace some phone calls that have been made inside the United States. How do you feel about the fact that the judge looks at this and says, you know what, this may be a real overreach on the part of the NSA and a violation of Americans' Fourth Amendment rights?
Well, I think there are a couple of problems with that. Problem number one is that the Supreme Court dealt with this back in the 70s. When it held explicitly that getting this kind of information, what's called metadata, the calling number, the number that's called, the date, and the duration of the call, that's it, which is information that's gotten from and in the hands of the telephone company, not the individual subscriber. That getting that kind of information is not a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So he says, well, you know, the use of cell phones and of communication devices is very different now. That's true, but the metadata, that information, is exactly the same as it was then. So there's a Supreme Court case directly to the contrary. Secondly, I think he has confused what the NSA could do with the information if it abused the program and didn't use it properly. For example, it could, you know, analyze your calls or my calls and see who we called and who called us and kind of draw a portrait of us on that basis. Yeah, they could do that, but they don't. And that's not what the program is about. As you pointed out, the program is about checking the numbers against known terrorist numbers to find out whether those terrorist numbers called one of the numbers in the database, or whether it was called by one of the numbers in the database. And that's a perfectly valid thing to do. It doesn't infringe anybody's rights.
I hear what you're saying. I think a lot of Americans were surprised to find out when this information came out from Edward Snowden that such a program even existed. It's troubling to many Americans to know that there is a gigantic database just sitting there. And I guess if we had some cases where, I mean, if we hadn't had some cases where we know that information has been abused and the government has abused its power, that there wouldn't be such a concern. But there truly is a concern among many Americans. I
agree with you that there's a concern, but part of the problem there is that you say it's been abused by the government. You know, in a sense, there's no such thing as the government. They're just a bunch of people and a bunch of different agencies, and the values and the approaches of different agencies are very different. The IRS, which has abused a lot of information, has a long history of behaving in a way that's very close to the line or over the line and operating under political influence. The NSA isn't that kind of agency at all. We're talking about different people with a different mission operating under different rules. So I think we need to be very careful when we start getting concerned about the government.
And former Attorney General Michael Mukasey is our guest. And you said, you know, Judge Leon would have a point if the government, in fact, were abusing this information, but they're not, and therefore, you know, it passes constitutional muster.
Correct.
Let me ask you this. If the IRS has asked every bank in America, or every international bank for that matter, to send detailed banking records of every single American to just store, so in case somebody violates the IRS code, they can go back and they can check that database of all of those bank statements and personal financial information of every American, would that be constitutional? I mean, would that pass Fourth Amendment muster if the IRS demanded that every bank give them all of this information just to store? They're not going to look at it; they're just going to store it.
The short answer is I'm not certain. But it would make me very uneasy to know that it was the IRS that had access to this information, because the IRS has as I said, a long and not uniformly honorable history of the way it uses information. But that's not this case.
Okay, but the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment and various. I mean, listen, I feel ridiculous trying to debate the Constitution with a former Attorney General, but they don't make distinctions between.
The Constitution belongs to everybody.
Right. Well, listen.
Not just former Attorneys General.
The founders did not make distinctions. I appreciate that. The founders didn't make distinctions between the good agencies and the bad agencies, and the good parts of government who perform well, and then those that don't, like, as you say, like the IRS. They said in general, across the board, it's unconstitutional to seize personal papers, information, houses, persons, effects. That's the Fourth Amendment.
Right. To seize it from your house or my house, but not to necessarily. I mean, if we turn our information over to a third party, you give your information to somebody else, then you're not treating it as confidential anymore. So, for example, the telephone company has the information on who you called and who called you. That's the basis on which you're billed.
Well, I guess what I really got to get down to the bottom line here is if the judge prevails and this gets struck down, are we at any greater risk in this country? Can you really point to cases where this has mattered?
Absolutely.
Why didn't they make that case during the argument?
Yeah, according to Richard Leon, the evidence that he saw said, I see in no way did this program actually prevent a terrorist attack.
No, yeah, what he said is, well, they didn't get it when the terrorist attack was imminent. They got several terrorist attacks in the early stages of planning. And he said, they could have gone in a more roundabout, circuitous way. Well, that's kind of like saying that unless you hit a walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth, it doesn't count. That's ridiculous.
So you're absolutely, you can say with absolute assurance, based on what you know, as having served as the 81st Attorney General, that there are cases where it made a huge difference.
Yes, sir.
All right. Attorney General Michael Mukasey, I have such a respect for you. I really have long-standing respect for you and your views on so much of this. I want to end with something that I know we can agree on. We had word earlier this week that Iran sent a monkey up into suborbit on a rocket, and so many people who have sort of poo-pooed the latest deal with the Iranians that the Obama administration seems to be marching toward and said, well, it's not really that big of a deal and it's not a problem. With this latest news, Iran is no longer Israel's problem in the Middle East. It's now the whole world's problem because they're showing that they're going to be able to deliver a warhead right here to Washington.
Correct. They want to. They are out to dominate, and the notion that we can deter them the way we deterred the Russians, I think, is very strongly mistaken. The Russians were deterred by the prospect of being destroyed. The Iranians are motivated by the prospect of being destroyed. The Ayatollah said, "We don't worship Iran. We worship Allah," and they have said that they don't care how many lives it costs. They will do what they want to do.
John Kerry has said that we are safer because of this temporary deal they've made with the Iranians. Do you agree?
No. I think we are much less safe because all of the momentum has shifted. The momentum is now away from sanctions. There are people overseas who have been dying to deal with the Iranians for years, and because the sanctions were in place, they felt reluctant to do it. They felt they were barred from doing it.
Right. Now,
with the prospect of the sanctions degrading, people are impatient to deal with the Iranians, and they may very well already have started. So you can't put that egg back together again once you break it.
We got to leave it right there.
I knew we'd agree on something at the end of this. Happy holidays, Attorney General Michael Mukasey. Thank you.